Welcome to AI Podcast. Today we'll discuss the most important current affairs from the Hindu 10 June 2026 edition with detailed analysis for UPSC aspirants.
Yeah, and it's a packed edition today for sure.
It really is. And, before we jump in, just a quick reminder. The book you don't feel like opening today may contain the concept that changes your rank tomorrow. Never underestimate a single study session.
That is honestly the best mindset to have, especially because, well, the sheer volume of news right now is just overwhelming.
Exactly. Which is why we designed this deep dive specifically for you, the listener. We're on a mission today to connect the dots across 13 critical current affairs topics.
Right, because memorizing isolated headlines just, it doesn't work anymore. You need the big picture.
Yeah, you really do. So we're going to cover everything from domestic welfare and mega infrastructure to environmental realities and global geopolitics.
And then, of course, we'll get into the new tech frontiers and constitutional federalism.
Right. So let's start with the domestic engine, because the government is basically trying to manage the grassroots economy while at the same time building these massive futuristic infrastructure projects.
Yeah, and you really see that tension when you look at rural employment. The government just announced they're transitioning away from MGNREGA.
Wait, moving away entirely?
Yeah, to a new scheme. It's called the Viksit Bharat Guarantee for Rozgar and Ajivika Mission Gramin, or VBG Ramg for short.
Okay, VBG Ramg. Got it. And they've put some serious money behind this, right? Like an interim allocation of 95,962 crore rupees.
Exactly. But that's just the center's share. You have to factor in the federal structure here. The states have to pitch in a 40% share.
Oh, right. So the actual total outlay is much larger.
Yeah, it balloons to about 1.25 lakh crore rupees. And the crucial phrase the government is using here is seamless transition. They want zero gap in work availability.
I mean, they kind of have to, right?
Yeah.
If you pause wages for millions of rural workers, demand just collapses.
Exactly. That 1.25 lakh crore is a consumption floor. Without it, the FMCG sector takes a hit, manufacturing slows down, and, overall GDP suffers.
Okay, so they're keeping the economic floor intact in the grassroots. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you have these massive physical infrastructure projects, like the Zojila Tunnel.
Oh, man, the Zojila Tunnel breakthrough is huge. They just did the final blast.
Yeah, it's what, a 13.14-kilometer tunnel? Cutting right through the Himalayas to connect Kashmir and Ladakh.
Right, and historically, the Zojila Pass gets buried in snow for almost half the year. Ladakh is essentially cut off.
Which is a logistical nightmare for the military.
An absolute nightmare. So this tunnel creates year-round, all-weather connectivity. It completely changes the game for military logistics in a highly sensitive border region.
Wow. And, somehow Zojila isn't even the most expensive project on the board right now. There's also the Great Nicobar Mega Project.
Yeah, the 92,000 crore rupee project. They just started the R&R census, the Rehabilitation and Resettlement Census in Campbell Bay.
Right, because they're building a mega port, an international airport, and a whole tourist township down there.
Which is strategically massive. A megaport near the Malacca Strait really anchors India's presence in the Indo-Pacific. It's a clear counter to Chinese maritime expansion.
But ecologically, it's a pristine rainforest, right? The socio-environmental challenge must be staggering.
Oh, it is. Clearing those forests and resettling indigenous populations is incredibly complex and controversial.
Which brings me to a big question. Replacing MGNREGA while funding 92,000 crore megaprojects feels like swapping out the engine of a car while simultaneously building a new highway for it to drive on. How does the government balance these massive cash outflows?
It's all about staggered disbursement. The welfare scheme demands immediate cash, right? But that 92,000 crore for Great Nicobar, that's spread out over 10 to 15 years.
Ah, okay. So it's not all leaving the treasury tomorrow.
Right. But your point about the environmental friction is spot on. You can't build megaports and Himalayan tunnels without running headfirst into global climate realities.
Which is exactly what's happening at the UN climate negotiations right now. The SB 64 talks in Bonn.
Yeah, and India is taking a very aggressive stance there. They are really pushing the developed world on the adaptation finance gap.
Okay, let's break that down for the listener. Mitigation versus adaptation. Mitigation is stopping the warming, like building solar farms. Right?
Exactly. And adaptation is surviving the warning that's already here, like seawalls or, drought-resistant crops. Developing nations desperately need money for that.
And the developed countries just haven't delivered on those financial pledges.
Not even close. And to make matters worse, India is actively opposing unilateral trade measures at Bonn. Specifically, the EU's Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism.
The CBAM. So explain the mechanics of CBAM, because the EU frames it as a climate policy, but India sees it as a trade weapon.
Well, the EU has strict emission rules for their own factories. So to stop cheaper, dirtier imports from undercutting them, they're going to tax incoming goods based on the carbon emitted during production.
Like taxing Indian steel or cement.
Exactly. India argues this is basically protectionism disguised as environmentalism. It penalizes developing nations just for industrializing.
Yeah, it ignores the whole idea of historical responsibility.
Yeah.
But, shifting from that macro-level climate policy down to the micro-level pollution is having terrifying effects on human health.
Oh, the new study in the journal Cell. This is a massive breakthrough in oncology.
Yeah, researchers found a 14-protein signature in blood plasma that can actually predict lung cancer years in advance.
Right. They used data from the UK Biobank, and what they discovered about how pollution causes cancer is fascinating. It's all about inflammation.
So the particulate matter we breathe in triggers massive inflammation in the lungs, and that wakes up dormant mutant cells.
Exactly. The pollution doesn't necessarily cause the initial mutation, but the inflammation acts like a biological alarm clock. It gives those dormant cells the fuel they need to multiply and form tumors.
That is terrifying. But they also found an existing drug that helps.
Okay.
Yeah, canakinumab.
Yes. In past trials, patients with this specific 14-protein warning sign who took canakinumab saw their lung cancer risk drop by 50%.
Because it's an anti-inflammatory, so it stops the alarm clock from ringing?
Precisely. The dormant cells just stay asleep.
I have to push back on this, though.
Yeah.
It's a medical marvel, but canakinumab costs $73,000 a year and isn't even available in India. Isn't this just a scientific luxury unless we find affordable alternatives?
You're completely right to be skeptical. At that price, it's not a public health solution at all.
So what's the point, practically speaking?
The point is that they identify the exact biological pathway. Now, researchers can look for generic, cheap anti-inflammatories that do the exact same thing. The target is finally illuminated.
Okay, that makes sense. The science paves the way for the economics to catch up. But speaking of economics, the global squeeze right now is hitting India really hard.
Yeah, the geopolitical conflicts are putting immense strain on our macroeconomic stability. Just look at the fallout from the Iran war.
The numbers are staggering. India's oil import bill jumped 53% in April.
Right, because we import up to 90% of our crude oil. When the Middle East destabilizes, our supply chains immediately feel the shock.
And it's not just oil. Natural gas prices went up, which means the fertilizer subsidy is projected to rise by 20%.
Which puts massive pressure on the balance of payments. When your import bill spikes like that, more foreign currency is draining out of the country than coming in.
I read the BP deficit was projected to hit $65 billion before the RBI stepped in to stabilize the rupee.
Exactly. And that kind of currency drain imports inflation straight into the domestic market. It threatens all our recent growth figures.
And it's not just the Middle East causing headaches. The European Union is tightening the screws too, with their 21st sanctions package against Russia.
Yeah, and this is highly significant because, for the first time, Indian entities are explicitly blacklisted in an EU package.
They're targeting companies allegedly supplying drone tech. Right. And also companies involved with Russia's shadow fleet.
Right, the shadow fleet. These are vessels moving Russian oil around the globe, turning off their trackers, doing ship-to-ship transfers to hide where the crude came from.
The EU claims companies in India, along with places like China and the UAE, are providing the logistics for this.
Which forces New Delhi into this really tight diplomatic corner. We need Western partnerships for technology and defense, but we also desperately need that discounted Russian oil to prevent domestic inflation.
It's an incredible balancing act. And honestly, the global anxiety isn't just about trade. The new data from CPRI and ICANN on nuclear arms is genuinely alarming.
The financial numbers alone are wild. The 9 nuclear-armed states spent a record $119 billion on their arsenals last year.
$119 billion in a single year. And China's stockpile is expanding rapidly, up to 620 warheads now.
Yeah, but defense analysts aren't just worried about the sheer number of warheads. The real panic is about AI.
Integrating artificial intelligence into nuclear command and control.
Exactly. In a crisis, human leaders need time to verify if a threat is real. If you plug AI into early warning systems, you get what they call compression of decision time.
Meaning the AI could recommend or even initiate a nuclear strike before a human can double-check the data. That is That's a terrifying arms race.
Truly terrifying.
And while all these global tensions play out, we also have friction right on our own borders. The India-Nepal border dispute over the Kalapani, Lipulekh, and Limpiadhura regions is back in the news.
Right. And for the listener's perspective, this is fundamentally a cartographic dispute stemming from the 1816 Treaty of Sugali.
The treaty that set the Kali River as the boundary? Right, but the two countries disagree on where the river actually begins.
Exactly. Different historical maps show different source streams. India maintains that the territory, including the Lipulekh Pass, is part of Pithoragarh district.
And Lipulekh is crucial, right? It's a major trade and pilgrimage route.
Very crucial. But Nepal recently issued updated maps claiming those areas. Both sides are committed to diplomatic dialogue, but the sovereignty claims are completely at odds.
Yeah, it's a very clear example of how colonial-era ambiguity still complicates modern bilateral ties. But, bringing it back to what you mentioned earlier about AI, we're already fighting a war on the digital frontier. Let's talk about Claude Mythos.
Oh, this AI model from Anthropic. It is entirely upending our understanding of cybersecurity.
Security researchers let it loose, and it acted like an autonomous super hacker. It found zero-day vulnerabilities that human engineers had missed for 16 years.
And just to clarify, a 0-day is a flaw that the software creators don't know about, so they have 0 days to fix it before it gets exploited.
But how does an AI find something thousands of humans missed for over a decade?
Because Mythos doesn't just scan for known bad code, it reasons. It analyzed the Linux kernel and demonstrated long horizon planning.
Meaning it found multiple tiny, harmless-looking anomalies and figured out how to chain them together to break the whole system.
Exactly. It mathematically calculates the perfect sequence to cause a system-level collapse.
Which is why there's this massive push for an India AI Safety Institute, an AEISI, right? We have a huge security gap.
A glaring gap. The US and UK already have safety institutes to test these frontier models. India doesn't have a dedicated body for that yet.
And our laws are lagging behind, too. Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw admitted the IT Act 2000 is completely inadequate for this AI era.
Well, yeah, the IT Act 2000 was written before smartphones, let alone autonomous hacking AI.
Regulating Claude Mythos with the IT Act 2000 is like trying to ground a supersonic jet using a horse carriage manual. And meanwhile, our pockets are being picked daily by these deceptive interfaces.
Oh, you're talking about dark patterns in e-commerce?
Yes. While we worry about frontier AI, Indian consumers are losing between 25,000 and 28,000 crore rupees every year to dark patterns.
It is absolute psychological exploitation. For those who don't know, dark patterns are website designs specifically built to trick you.
Like drip pricing, where they hide the handling fees until the very last second of checkout.
Right. Or forced add-ons, or those subscription traps that take one click to buy, but you have to jump through a million hoops to cancel.
Yeah, the Roach Motel design.
Mm-hmm.
The report said 88% of online buyers in India fall victim to this, losing almost 90 rupees a month.
It's systemic theft engineered into the marketplace.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And whether we're talking about digital laws or, rural welfare, it always comes back to who actually has the power to govern. Which brings us to our final topic today, a classic center-state friction point.
Right, the situation in Tamil Nadu. This is a textbook example of constitutional federalism at work.
It's over the appointment of university vice-chancellors, right?
Exactly. The governor, acting as the chancellor of state universities, set up a search committee for a new VC. But he included a nominee from the University Grants Commission, the UGC.
And the state government pushed back hard against that.
Yeah, they see it as a center overstepping. Education is on the concurrent list, so both can legislate. But the state funds these universities.
Right. So they feel that inserting a UGC nominee undermines their academic autonomy and bypasses the state legislature.
Exactly. It's a live stress test of the boundaries between an elected state government and a centrally appointed governor.
Which is a perfect case study for the GS Paper 2 syllabus. And honestly, just look at the terrain we've covered today.
It's massive.
From the macroeconomic balancing of 1.25 lakh crore rural job schemes to the geopolitical strain of EU shadow fleet sanctions. We went from the microbiology of lung cancer prediction all the way to autonomous AI hackers and university appointments.
And the goal for the listener isn't to just memorize these 17 things separately. It's about seeing the connective tissue.
Right. How the Iran war impacts a farmer's fertilizer costs in Punjab. Synthesis is what makes a top aspirant.
Yeah.
But before we go, I want to leave you with one final, chilling thought that kind of merges a few of the things we discussed. We talked about how an AI, like Claude Mythos, can autonomously reason through code to find hidden flaws. And we talked about how dark patterns currently steal 28,000 crore rupees through static, tricky website designs.
Uh-huh. Two huge digital threats.
Right. But what happens when they merge? As AI gets exponentially better at understanding human psychology, what happens when dark patterns aren't just static website designs, but dynamically generated by AI to exploit your specific individual psychological weaknesses in real time?
Oh, wow. Like an interface that completely changes its shape just to manipulate you based on your browsing history and stress level.
Exactly. How will any law ever catch up to that? It's a custom-built trap for every single person. Something to ponder before you open your books for your next study session. The landscape is complex, but we'll be here to help you map it out. Keep connecting those dots.